You're a lover. You're meant to be moved by the beautiful things of life, including beautiful people. And that can actually take you to worshiping God.
I think that's going to blow guys away. Like, go read Song of Songs, fellas.
Right.
You are that man.
Right.
That heart is in you. You are wired for that.
Yes.
And what you're saying, Sam, is that no matter our story,
Yes.
innocence can be recovered.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Wild at Heart podcast here in the week of June 3rd. Oh, thank God it's June. And it's not Alan or one of our team sitting here. You're wondering, who's the guy with John this week? My friend Sam Jolman is here, and I'm going to introduce him in just a moment because we are going to talk about male sexuality. This is going to be an amazing podcast, but I do want to give you the heads up to that in case there's young ears listening. A lot of families, it's delightful. A lot of families will listen to the podcast together. So I'm thinking maybe age 15, Sam. Does that feel about right?
Older teenagers.
Older teenagers would just say would be appropriate to hang out and listen. But if you've got younger ears in the room, maybe you want to hit pause and usher them into some other activity, or go listen to the Bible Project podcast and come back and pick this up on your own later, because we are going to dive into some pretty beautiful things about the healing of male sexuality. Before we do, let's take our pause. So, Jesus, I'm aware right now that even just naming sexuality and male sexuality is already like, whoa, for people. So let's take a moment and pause, Lord, and just, I give everyone and I give everything to you. Everyone and everything. Just the chaos that's coming at you this week already, the demands, the people, the drama, just lay it all down, friends. Let's take a moment to breathe and pause. And Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit, the reason I'm doing this, I'm trying to release right now, is because I need you. I need your life and your love and just renewed union with you. So breathe into me, restore our union, help me lay it all down, and then speak to us all here in this week's podcast. Meet us here. In Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Anytime you throw that out, hey, we're going to talk about sexuality, like that raises so much. But I want to first introduce you. So Sam Jolman and I go way back.
Yes.
We've been friends for a long time. And you are a therapist.
Yes.
In private practice.
Yep.
For about how long now?
20 years? Almost 20 years.
Holy cow,
yes.
Sam.
Yes.
When do you get a sabbatical, buddy?
Hopefully sometime after the book launch.
Yeah. Okay. And where were you trained? Where did you do your graduate work?
Yeah, so I did my graduate work at Reformed Theological Seminary, and they had a small little counseling program there, 20 people at a time. And the goal of that and kind of the ethos of that place was you can only take people as far as you've gone yourself. So you have to look at your own life. They wanted us in community with each other. And I think that drew me.
Yeah.
The idea you can't take somebody somewhere from a textbook.
Yes.
You have to go live that. And as I say, smoke what you sell, so to speak.
Yeah.
In other words, you have to be the real deal and actually, do work on your own heart.
You do. You have to look at your own life. You have to have gone to those places. That was my program as well, years and years ago. And it just blows my mind that many graduate programs don't require that.
Yes.
That you sit with a therapist, that you sit in groups as well. It's just mind blowing.
Right.
They're sending people into the field.
Right. Who maybe even haven't looked at their own life. It's a bit scary.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, and that was more than 20 years ago now.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2006, and we were counseling through the program with a group of clients, and then came out here to Colorado on a Vision Quest trip that my wife and I took at the time, and felt like God invited us here, and have been in private practice ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. And married.
Yep.
Kids.
Just celebrated 21 years
of
marriage in April, and 3 boys. So another 3-boy dad. And yes, 12, 10, and 7.
Beautiful.
So it just gets wilder and wilder with the day.
Yeah. So you are in it. You are in the trenches as a dad.
Yes.
And you are in the trenches with people.
Yes.
And their recovery work.
Yeah.
Right? Across a whole range of issues, but you do work a lot with men.
Yes. A lot with men, married couples.
Yes.
Which is just a wild rodeo.
Yep.
It comes in the room with them. And I just love just being a part of steering the passion in the room of marriage counseling. And then I also do sexual trauma recovery.
Yeah.
So, and that's for men and women.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So the reason Sam's here is because he has a new book, and we're going to shout it and put it in the show notes. The book is titled The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality.
Yeah.
And what I know about the publishing process is that probably wasn't the title you had as you were writing the book.
That's right.
So what was the original title?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it was Innocence and Awe. The Sex Talk You Never Got was the subtitle.
Okay.
So the goal was, what is sex at its essence? Right? What does it stir up in a man?
Yes.
And particularly around the idea of sexual innocence.
Yeah.
Lost sexual innocence.
Yes.
That was,
I remember you coming to me. It was years ago. We had a conversation about this over coffee, and you're like, John, we have to help guys recover innocence.
Yes.
And honestly, the jaded therapist in me is like, good luck, pal.
Right.
But you were right. You were at the epicenter of the fight for the human heart.
Yes.
And for male sexuality.
Yes.
Okay. So this is where we're going to go.
Okay.
Today, I got a number of questions, and we're not even going to be able to get to half of it. But you chose a unique approach into this.
Yeah.
To male sexuality, to writing a book about it. I want to talk about that first. Like, why through the doorway of the lover? Why through the doorway of the heart?
Yeah.
Like, what is distinctive about that?
Yeah.
From your work with men?
So, a lot of times, guys, the approach to sexuality is often, you're going to struggle with lust. You've got too much sexuality. It's something wild and even monstrous that you're going to have to sort of corral and contain. And it treats sexuality as, not this thing created good by God. And so that was one perspective of like, is that just true? Are men just sort of stuck with this thing that's always going to be kind of too wild in them and too much, right? Is the problem too much sexuality in a man? Is that the problem in the world?
Yeah.
We just have too much sexuality. I already knew the answer was no, right? God made sexuality good. He blessed Adam in the garden and said, this is very good. So it can't be just male sexuality itself is fundamentally broken. So what's missing?
Yes.
Like what's happened to men? What's going awry?
Yes.
And as I sit with men, I kept coming back to there's something about the heart getting disconnected from their sexuality, that a lot of men push their sexuality kind of into the shadows of their being, right? It kind of lives in this wilderness place within them.
Yes.
It's not, again, coming back to the title of the book, The Sex Talk You Never Got.
Yes.
It's a place that men probably got the least meaningful conversation, or
100%.
probably the most neglected place of a man's life, even more than male spirituality, which is another neglected place.
Yes.
And that might sound crazy at first, right? Like you're saying male sexuality has been neglected? Like,
yeah,
but I would say men are overly sexualized and under sexually nurtured.
Yes.
So being sexual is not the same as being sexually mature.
Yes. Or discipled, fathered, mothered, tutored, right?
Right.
So I want to pause on, I know you're going to say a lot of really profound things, so I'm going to stop. Let's just unpack for a moment. For most men, their sexuality has been separated from their heart.
Yes.
That's a really big idea. And as soon as you said that, I went back to some of my own sexual struggles in the years of our marriage, where the physical was there,
right?
But I felt a disconnection from the heart.
Yeah.
And there would be, intimate moments, and it might be on like a special vacation, and it's sort of obvious that, hey, we're gonna, things are gonna get electric here tonight. But my heart was not with me, and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
So why does the heart get separated for men from their sexuality?
Gosh, that can happen in 1,000 ways, and as I say in the book, as ironic as this sounds, even to say that evil hates sexuality, evil hates male sexuality, and because it's a creation of God.
Yes.
And it's meant, and again, these sentences sound at some level wildly crazy to say, but male sexuality was meant to be a gift to the world in some way. So I believe evil comes early in a man's story.
Yes.
To separate him, to bring, and how does evil come to separate us from our sexuality? Primarily through the category of shame.
Yes.
Through instilling shame somewhere early in your story.
Yeah.
So you think about, Adam and Eve in the garden, and we have, modern day, we have chapters and verses that create these separations, right? It feels like a pause and then the story carries. But if you think about it, Genesis, where it's almost like a curtain closing scene where Adam meets Eve for the first time, and he breaks into poetry, and it's a very erotic and holy at the same time moment, right?
Yep.
But the very next sentence, so it ends with, and Adam and Eve were naked. The man and his wife were naked, and they felt no shame. Right? Next chapter. But if you just keep reading, the next sentence is, now the serpent was more crafty.
Yes.
So, not even one sentence later, right? Evil is already after
shame.
Yes.
Around shame. We've just named shame. God in the narrative names. There's no shame here, folks. Right. Your sexuality is beautiful. Your sexuality is good. Your sexuality is God designed. And there's some beautiful research in the book, by the way. And just the way you talk about how the human being is highly wired for stimulus and for pleasure, like way overloaded with neurons and receptors, right?
Right.
Just in the human being.
Yes.
You are way, way overloaded for like just functionality.
Yep.
It has to be about pleasure.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then no shame.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's good. We celebrate it. And then the evil one attacks with shame.
Right. Right. And I think that's the goal, is to join shame to your arousal, to join shame to your pleasure. Right.
Wow.
so that you shut down and start to numb that wiring and think what's moving in me is bad, right? Like this, I need to shut this down.
Yes.
Look what happened. Obviously evil is attempting to get you to think it's you. You're perverted. You're like the things that happen to you sexually or
the way you were instructed or not instructed.
right.
The stimulus that you found because you're an emerging man,
Right.
boy, adolescent man, and you are going to be stimulated.
Right.
Right. And then shame coming into that.
Right.
To separate you from your heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then we disown what we feel shame for. Right. We think, oh, that's bad in me. I have to get away from that. I have to stop being that.
Yes.
Right. So at some level, I think, and again, this sounds audacious, but I think at some level, every man has done this with some part of his sexuality.
Pushed it away.
Yeah. Like I can't be well with that. I can't be integrated with that. Something's not good about that.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I'm jumping ahead to something that you say in the book. You talk about how the title of the chapter is Your Real Sexual Story.
Yes.
And how everyone has a sexual story.
Yep.
It's important to bring it out from hiding.
Right.
Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so I start the chapter with, a version of my own story, which is fourth grade. And I'm, we're getting the videos in school, the sex education videos in fourth grade. And, a permission slip had gone out to parents and some kid in the school got, the intel got leaked to him. The videos are coming, right? And so we're on the playground and there's hiatus on any kind of conversation between boys and girls and it hushed kind of conversation. Like we're going to get the videos and, and we kind of know it's about this thing, sex, but, I didn't know what sex was. And I knew we were going to talk about girls' bodies and boys' bodies. And, so I'm over by the tire swing and this friend, Adam, a boy that I had walked home with, several times a week we would walk home together. And he says to me, do you know what sex is? And I say, no, I don't. And of course, this is exactly what he wanted to hear, right? And so he says, well, I do. Would you want to know? And I say, sure. And so he tells me this story, right? This of what sex is. Sex is a man and women get together and they wrestle naked and the woman scares the man and he pees and she catches it in her private parts and that's sex. And
this is your introduction.
This is my introduction to sex. And of course I'm shocked, grossed out, horrified. Like, and also how does that work gymnastically? And for every time he gets scared, right? So I'm reeling from like, what? So I take that question home to my mom and I don't remember that conversation, but I remember, probably a week later, we're having a play date and my mom calls me into the kitchen with her friend and says, tell Miss Joan, what you learned on the playground. And obviously, right, there's a level of hilarity to, if you step back, right, what's that script of sex, right? Yeah. It's at some level funny, but I hadn't gotten the punchline yet.
No.
Right. As a fourth grader. And so I tell them both what I learned on the playground and they burst out laughing, which makes sense at some level.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the punchline. Yeah. And I burst into tears. Because I didn't get what I didn't get.
Yes. Yes.
And my mother hugged me and comforted me. But I was left with this overwhelming feeling of shame.
Yes.
That I must not get this thing called sex.
Yes.
And something even about my curiosity must be wrong.
Yes.
So that was a moment, right? And that seems so, on one level, subtle, but on
Right.
another level, totally wounding.
The introduction of shame.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so what did evil whisper in that moment to me?
Yes.
Stop being curious about this.
Yes.
Right? You better
Yes.
take your curiosity underground.
Yeah.
Which set me up to later struggle with looking at pornography.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, well, I can take it here. When my parents got the internet. And that's where I'll find answers.
Yep.
Right? So the cycle of shame
Yes.
continues.
Yeah. Yeah. Just going back to those 4th grade videos,
Yeah.
things have changed somewhat, but those programs typically do not address the deep issues of the heart,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like your whole thing in the book is you're born to be a lover,
Right.
a lover.
Right. 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 So, as I say in the book, they address the mechanics,
Yeah.
which is one version of the conversation, right? You need that. You need to know how sperm meets egg, right? That's a basic
Yes.
sex talk, but it doesn't go to what I say in the book is the poetics
Yeah.
of sex,
Yes.
right? You can get the mechanics right and totally miss the poetics of sex, which is a line I'm borrowing from Esther Perel, a writer, who talks about, the realm of desire and romance, like what animates your sex or your sexuality, right? Like what
Yes.
moves you
Yes.
in this realm.
And what could take the place of shame? Right?
Yes.
Like romance and play and wonder and awe can take the place of shame.
Yes.
And reconnect the heart.
Yes.
Right. To almost our banished sexuality.
Right. Right. You look at the primary piece of, book of education, if we could put it that way, in the Bible, Song of Songs. It is all poetry. It's all about the poetics. And yes, the mechanics are there, right? They're talking about their bodies.
Yeah.
But it's primarily about romance and sensuality and awe, right?
Yeah.
He's the lover. He's literally describing every part of her body and what he loves about every part of her body.
Yes.
Right? It's not simply, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right? And get
Yep.
it over with and not really talk
Yep.
about it. It's
Yeah.
drawn out romance.
So this is what I love about the approach of your book. Your book is about healing the lover's heart
Yes.
as essential
Yes.
to healing male sexuality.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. As a counselor, I have the privilege of I get to sit with guys and in a confidential place where they can say whatever they want, right? And what comes out from men all the time, like it just happened last week, twice with 2 different clients, men who will say to me, I feel more like the woman in the relationship because I actually want the emotional stuff.
Wow.
Right. But why do they have to say it like, I feel like the woman? Why that line?
I'm blown away by 2 things. One, that they're willing to admit that. That's incredible.
Right.
It was the dissociation I was feeling.
Right.
Right. It was, no, my heart is part of this.
Right.
How do I get my heart reconnected to this?
Right.
Okay. I'm blown away that guys are able to articulate that.
Totally. It's so brave. Every time they say it, I'm like, you know that about yourself? Like, that's amazing that you are in tune to that.
Yeah.
Like one guy literally said to me, and he gave me permission to talk about this. Because I said, that's amazing that you know that. He said, I know I'm supposed to just get it up and always be ready.
Wow.
Right? He says, but I actually need the foreplay.
Yes.
Like, I want that stuff.
Yes.
And I was like, that's amazing that you know that. But that's like, that was twice last week. Another guy said the same thing. How much he appreciates. He says, I love sex, but I also love it when my wife grabs my face and just says, I love you.
Mm.
He says, that gets me going almost just as much, if not more. That affection and, the trappings of love, you could say, right?
Yeah. Song of songs.
Song of songs.
All the poetry.
Right.
All of the romance.
Right. Like if you think about the two most arousing scenes, or you could say the two most men who are the most aroused or the most virile. And again, it's my opinion, but Adam in Eden meets Eve for the first time, both naked, and Song of Songs, right? The poet in Song of Songs. What happens when they're aroused? They break into poetry.
Yeah.
These like poet lovers. Like what?
Okay. I got to help guys who are tracking with us right now. Some guys are going, thank you for naming this. This is huge for me. Say more. Some guys are saying, what? Why don't I have that? What happened to that for me?
Right.
Let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
So how does the lover heart get shut down?
I mean, again, every man has his own story. Well, first of all, male culture does not have a category or a place of blessing for the lover in a man. That
there's a blessing for the erotic,
right?
Because there's all that, right? The stimulation, the pornography, the music, all that. So there's a blessing for the erotic, but there isn't quite. That's not the same,
right? There's something. Again, I would want to name. There's some kind of macho thing that shuts this down. I think about a guy I write about in the book who he's 7 years old and he was a very just full-hearted boy. He described to me, this is a client who's given me permission to write his story. And, he's 7 years old and he just remembers like loving life and being just like a full-hearted boy, right? He comes every night. The tradition was, and the ritual, brush his teeth, get his pajamas on, and come downstairs and kiss his dad goodnight, give his dad a hug, and then go to bed. He turns 7, comes downstairs, comes up to his dad, and his dad strong arms him, holds him at bay, and says, we've had enough of that.
Oh.
It's time to be done with that.
Wow.
And he's heartbroken, shocked.
Wow.
What? What do you mean be done with that?
Yeah.
Right? Something in him gets shut down, right? The lover, right? The affectionate, right? Just the attachment to his dad.
Yes.
And desire to get love and affection from his father and physical touch.
Yep.
His dad says, we've had enough of that. And that ended for the rest of his childhood. Physical affection with his dad. It was later he found out, and you start to hear the generational impact of this. It was at 7 that his father, his grandmother was overwhelmed with his father. She was a single mother and sent him to an orphanage at 7.
Oh my gosh.
So you see him, this dad's reenacting his own story on his son.
Yeah.
Right? Probably unaware.
Yeah.
He's obviously culpable for that.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying every man has that story.
Yeah.
But somewhere the lover was not affirmed. Your love for a dog or a cat growing up, like that's growing something in your heart.
Yes. Yeah. And the love of all things, right?
Yeah.
The love of music and riding bikes and all that, like letting the lover heart come forth.
Right.
But that the young lover's heart in every boy at some point experiences wounding, shame, failure. Oh gosh, I'm just thinking of first girlfriends that break your heart.
Right.
And you want to just put that lover heart away.
Yep.
But then how do you progress in male sexuality without it?
Right. Right. And which leaves men limping, right? Like, and you do feel this body urge for release, but something will feel missing.
Yeah.
Like it's, where's the rest?
Yes.
Where's the poetics is what I would say again.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
what's being ached for.
Okay. So folks, as you're listening to this, it is stirring many things. And one of the early chapters is you have a sexual story.
Yep.
Every man and woman does.
Yep.
And it's time to bring it out.
Yep.
From hiding.
Yep.
That's really important.
Yep.
Okay. And as you're listening to this, like, man, it's happening for me in the conversation right now. Wow. I'm realizing my dad never talked to me about sexuality. He did so many other things right. Like we went camping together and he taught me how to use hand tools and he liked being with me. So I had his affection, but he was utterly silent on this. And then discovering his stack of pornography magazines back in the garage and going, holy cow, and not having a category as all of this awakening is taking place, right? So everyone listen to this. Like you have a sexual story. It's important. What did we learn? Where did shame get in? Right? I want to talk a little bit about recovering innocence. We held that out there early in the conversation because I remember you coming to me with this about 6 years ago. Let's return to that.
So I'm sitting in a lecture with our friend Dan Allender. And he says, this is 12 years ago or so. And he says, innocence is the ability to be in awe. And something inside of me lit on fire with, what? I thought innocence died when you grew up, right? Like I thought innocence was just something you grieve. You don't get back. Sorry.
Wow.
But he says, wait, because I'm thinking, if I can restore a sense of awe, you mean I can restore my innocence? And I thought right away of my own sexuality, right? And at that time, I had journeyed and labored through, counseling and engaging my pornography use and going to God with that, and was really engaging it from those places. But I hadn't even thought that innocence was possible again.
Yes.
Like sexual innocence can be restored.
Yes.
And it set me on this journey of like, wow, that too can be recovered. You can actually recover a sense of awe for the beautiful things of life, the good things of life. Right? Awe is for awesome things. It can also be for awful things, right? We have that in our language. This sense of awe. So I did some reading on the research around awe, and it's actually a studied emotion. They've categorized it and done research on it, which is the fascinating thing about awe is it's non-hedonic, meaning the more you get of it, we think of like chocolate or alcohol or other pleasures, right? The more you take, the more you need to get the same level of pleasure.
Yes.
It's hedonic. You get a kind of accustomed to it. Awe is the opposite. The more awe you get, the more pleasure you can take in it. So your pleasure actually grows over time. Wow. So it's expansive. It actually can heal you and restore something in you.
Yes.
The more you let yourself awe. So, I've thought about this idea of, lust, right? Lust in a man, which is obviously a real thing. And Jesus warns about it very strongly.
Yes.
Right? Like, this is adultery at some level at its heart. But I think, especially this was true for me, and I think for a lot of men, we get really suspicious then of everything that moves in us. Like,
wow.
Oh,
you mean any kind of arousal that,
right.
Therefore.
Right. Like, you're standing in, I don't know, Starbucks and you see a beautiful woman and you think, I I got to shut that down. Right. And I am inviting in the book, hold on, that doesn't have to be lust. You're a lover. You're meant to be moved by the beautiful things of life, including beautiful people. And that can actually take you to worshiping God. That you can thank God for the beauty of a woman who's standing next to you in Starbucks doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, I'm lusting. You can take it there.
It is amazing. So do you know Augustine's quote on this?
No.
Let my soul praise you for all these beauties, but let it not attach itself to them.
Wow.
Through the trap of lust.
That's so good.
Right? So
Yes.
there is awe and wonder at all the beautiful things, music, nature, right?
Sunsets and wildflowers.
Yes. And the beauty of the feminine form for men.
Right.
Right. But that doesn't have to equal possessive grasping.
Right.
Which degenerates, into lust and adulterous thoughts and that kind of thing. They're not the same thing.
Right.
Because you have a lover's heart. That Song of Songs, I think that's going to blow guys away. Like, go read Song of Songs, fellas.
Right.
You are that man.
Right.
That heart is in you. You are wired for that.
Yes.
And what you're saying, Sam, is that no matter our story,
yes,
innocence can be recovered.
Yes. Yes.
And this is Luke, where Jesus says, the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost.
Yeah.
He doesn't say the lost, right? Like kind of like a Baptist.
Yeah, right.
Got to get out there and save the lost.
Souls.
Which I believe in, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in saving souls. But there's a more comprehensive understanding of what it means to save a soul. But when Jesus says, I've come to save all that was lost.
Right.
And there's just a little teeny exercise here in the book where you invite the reader. It says, so the man and the woman were naked and without shame.
Yeah.
And you say, put your name in that.
Yeah.
So David was naked and without shame. Jamal was naked and without shame. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Hang on a second. You can recover that?
Right. 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 It's not lost. And so I recorded the audiobook a couple weeks ago, and there's two producers, right? Audio engineers in the studio, and they're listening and, redo that line. It's just, they're doing their job. Right. Well, one of the guys the last day just said, I was listening to your book, and he said, I'm in every story in your book. Wow. And we had like an hour-long conversation where he opened up about his own sexual struggles and journey. And the thing that was hardest for him to believe is that you're telling me I can get my innocence back? Like, I've seen too much. I've done too much. I know too much. Like, this is a terrifying place in my life. You're telling me I can get that back. And I was able to say, yes, it's not lost. It's, innocence is not just lost when you're guilty. It's not lost when you lose naivety and now you've seen too much and know too much, right? Like, how does Jesus invite us to receive anything, right? How do you receive the kingdom of God? Like a child, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he wants to restore something. It's the thing I think he wrestled with about the Pharisees and the religious leaders is they wouldn't awe at life.
Yes.
It was all about control and rule and rules. So it was this beautiful moment. And to watch this audio engineer just really bravely open up and with tears in his eyes, talk about his ache for his innocence back.
Yeah.
I think that's the greatest lie evil has over men's sexuality is it's sorry. You're just
Yes.
going to struggle.
Oh gosh.
Um,
Oh gosh, Sam. Men and women, because of the power of shame
yes.
and because of how deeply shame gets into sexuality, like it gets into many, many things. It gets into our gifting.
Yep.
And it gets, into our parenting and many, many places. Am I a good son or daughter? Like shame gets in many places. But
Mhm.
wouldn't you say that it gets into our sexuality in the worst sort of way?
Yes.
Okay. So to men and women listening to this going, there is a way, there is a path
Yeah.
towards the healing of your sexuality where you can feel no shame. Because if the cross and the work of Christ doesn't take away shame, it's not fully effective.
Right.
Okay. So we just need to name that.
Right.
Like everybody loves the cross. And if you follow Jesus, the cross is everything. And you go, yes. So then it must be effective here too. The whole work of Christ, the
Yep.
full redemptive
Yep.
work of Christ
Yep.
must be effective here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Right. And as I say in the book, again, my opinion, but I'm convinced Jesus' greatest kindness was actually for those stuck in sexual brokenness and shame
And harm.
and harm.
Yes.
Right. He had the most tender conversations.
Yeah, I
with
noticed
them.
that as I was reading that. I thought that was a really intriguing insight.
Yeah, he just seems to have the most drawn out conversations with them, right? The woman at the well, the woman caught in adultery,
Mary Magdalene?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Who does he show up to on Easter morning first?
Right.
Mary, the prostitute.
Right.
The former prostitute.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
Yep. And I would even say, and again, it maybe is interesting to think of him this way, but the demon possessed man, the wild man of the Gadarenes,
Yes.
right? He's naked and cutting himself.
Yes.
And in a kind of wild rage in the
Yes.
wilderness, right?
Yes.
He's banished to the wilderness.
Yeah.
You think about, gosh, what happened to this man that he would roam naked, right? And exposed, right? He's just kind of a living picture of shame.
Yes.
And he comes running wildly up to Jesus, right?
Yes.
And Jesus isn't turned off and, doesn't move away from him. He actually moves towards him, sets him free, and clothes him, right? It says they came back, the men flee, right? Because his disciples leave.
Yeah.
They're scared of what's going on.
Yeah.
But it says they come back and the man is sitting in his right mind and clothed, talking with Jesus.
I never noticed that in the story. I mean, I know it now. I can see it. I hear the text. Wow.
Yeah. It's a fascinating scene of like,
what a lovely picture.
Yeah. And to me, it captures what God hopes to do with all the kind of, as I say, right? Like your sexuality is often for men a place they've pushed into the kind of wilderness of their inner world. It's probably the place they've had the least conversation.
Yes.
Meaningful.
Yes.
Conversation.
Any conversation. Right.
And so I think it's a picture of like Jesus wants to sit with you, clothe you, right? And deal with the warfare set against your sexuality. What does he do first? He deals with the warfare that's bound this man.
Yep.
But then he talks with him. And, I don't know what they talked about,
That's
but
beautiful.
I imagine it might have been some of this guy's story.
Wow. That's just huge. Okay. Folks, I know. I just need to say, I know. We are barely touching the surface. The thing is, Sam has written a very, very beautiful book that's extremely helpful. We're going to put it in the show notes. It's called The Sex Talk You Never Got. And it's not the sex talk you never got, right? That's
Mhm.
just a way of drawing people into, you haven't
Yeah.
had good conversation about this.
Yeah.
You haven't been able to tell your story. There's so much healing available here.
Yeah.
We're also
Yeah.
going to put into the show notes an audio series that men have found very, very helpful from
Yes.
Wild at Heart called Men Talking About Women.
Yeah.
And in there is also some guided prayer into the healing of sexual harm
Mhm.
and sexual misconduct, both. But I want to come back around to towards the close of the book. You have a chapter with a pretty bold title. Is
Mhm.
The Only Path
Yes.
to Sexual Healing. Go ahead.
So we've been talking about shame, and not much in life is black and white, right? On or off, red pill, blue pill.
Yep.
But I think this one is. There's really only two ways out of shame, and one is only temporary. It's not really a way out, but that's contempt or kindness. And I would say, in other words, how do you escape your shame? Shame isn't something we can live in long. So we usually get out of it with some form of contempt, right? Like, you if you're me and you can't find your keys one morning, and you're walking around the house looking for your keys, it's so tempting to say, "You idiot,"
Yes.
to yourself, right?
Yes.
Or to bark at your kids, who's got my keys, right?
Yes.
Who hid them, right? That's contempt. It's how we get out of things, how we got out of shame. It's temporary. It doesn't work, but it's a lot of what fuels men acting out in their sexuality, right? And there'll be a lot to unpack there. It's in the book, but the only real path out of sexual brokenness, sexual struggle, is the kindness of Jesus. And then also the kindness you give to yourself, or the kindness you receive from community, a counselor, a mentor, men in your life. And that's strange, right? But if you go to, take Romans 2, it's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance.
Mm-hmm.
That Jesus doesn't want to rage at you here.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to engage you with kindness.
Yes.
That's the path to restoration. That's the path out of shame.
Because Sam, when people are in shame, what do they turn upon themselves? Like, describe that. There's a turning against oneself.
Right. Again, shame is in the body. This is from research. Shame in the body actually triggers fight or flight. So you actually have a stress response in your body, a visceral physical response of escape, right? Or of fight or flight.
Wow.
Only there's not a bear, right, that you can run from or attack. You're the danger.
Yes.
So again, we talked about splitting.
Yes.
Right? What creates splitting? Well, you're trying to get away from something in you that feels shameful and dangerous.
Yes.
So you split or you attack yourself, right?
Yep.
So like, again, I use the analogy of losing my keys and you idiot, right? Because I feel exposed. Shame
at
its heart is the experience of exposure. I feel exposed. I feel like the worst of me is seen.
Yep.
That temptation, right? It's not just that evil wants you stuck in sin, sexual sin. Evil wants you stuck in a kind of sexual self-hatred.
Yes.
Right? Like, man, I'm so twisted. I'm so dirty. I'm so perverted.
Yeah.
Right? What's that voice you've been hearing?
Yes.
Right? That's evil's hope and temptation that you'll again turn on the glory of God in you. Your God-designed sexuality.
Well, okay, so that's like another massive statement. So hang on, we got the enemy through shame is trying to get you to turn against the very glory of God in you.
Yes.
That's a big idea.
Yes.
Including in your sexuality?
Yes, your sexuality and your lover heart.
Wow.
Right? So that you disown them.
Wow.
So that your sexuality isn't characterized as full of awe and wonder and beauty and love and romance and aliveness and virility, right? And all these,
Yes.
that it's not characterized by that it's largely something you do to get release.
Yeah. Yeah. With all sorts of internal ambivalence
Right.
going on at the
Right.
same time.
Right.
Yeah. That's really good. Okay. I think this book is really important for men. I think it would be awesome if guys who are doing men's groups or kind of
Yeah.
have a band of brothers that they hang out with get this and talk about it together. I
Yes.
think that could be huge.
Yep.
Do you think couples could do that?
Yes. So, I've had women obviously have their own story of male sexuality and what that's meant for them.
Yes.
And so I think a conversation, and some early readers who have been women gave feedback of this was really healing just to hear what it's meant to be, that they've
Okay.
ached for something.
Okay.
And
Okay.
oh my gosh,
Okay.
that's it. That's what
Yeah.
I've been hoping for.
Yeah.
And even just the hope of,
Yeah.
oh, men aren't monstrous.
Yes.
So I think, yes, obviously the tenderness of beginning to walk into each other's sexual stories, right? And to know what stories are in the bedroom with us
Yeah.
that we didn't know were here,
Wow. Yes.
being able to have that awareness and the
Yes.
tenderness of that.
Yes.
Oh, that's why
Yes.
that's how you hear me when I say that to you.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Right. And being able to have that narrative,
Yeah.
it's huge.
That's
for
really
couples.
beautiful. I'm thinking about Stacy in my early years. We both came into our marriage with so much sexual trauma, so much sexual brokenness on both sides.
Mhm.
And we would pray. We didn't really know a whole lot what else to do.
Yeah.
But we knew Jesus is here and we are being new. We are being remade. We could feel that the born again experience was really taking place in us. There was healing and joy and laughter and there was goodness. And as we approached our sexuality, we would just invite Christ into it before we headed into the bedroom. And that was incredibly healing. It was a simple little step.
Yeah.
But it's the invitation of Jesus. Would you come into this now?
Yeah.
We don't want this part of our life to remain outside of your care.
Yeah.
Would you come in? Would you be a part of this with us?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And then I want to tell another touching story. I really believe I have Stacy's permission here. We are well into our marriage. Okay. We're past the 20-year mark. Okay. And there was a weekend away and there was a VRBO and there was a swimming pool and there was kind of this romantic setting. And as we were moving towards intimacy, Stace said, I feel like newlyweds. I could just weep at the healing work of Christ and the recovery of innocence.
Wow.
I mean, we were coming out of a lot of harm.
Yeah.
And to get to a place through process, through therapy, through intimacy with Jesus. And one of the most powerful things you say towards the end of the book in our healing is through attachment with God.
Yep.
The healing power of attachment to remove shame. Right?
Yep.
Like, oh gosh, it's so all of that bringing us to a place where we could feel innocence again and even shyness.
Yeah. Right.
Like in a good way.
Right.
Yeah. was really sweet.
John, we just crossed 21 years. And I would say, you don't write a book to tell people what you know. You write a book to grow and to discover.
Yes.
And so I didn't write this book as, hey guys, I figured it out.
Yes.
I wrote it as, I need my innocence back.
Yes.
And so I would say even in the last 4 or 5 years, it's taken me that long to get brave and
Mm,
with my desire, sexual
mm,
desire
mm,
with Amanda even,
mm.
and know how to pursue her as a lover. So I resonate with there's a new innocence to the way we're engaging, making love.
Mm.
Um, and I say in the book, uh, vulnerably, you know, God has given me even laughter after orgasm. This like return of something innocent
Yes.
in sexuality. That hasn't been there, for a decade and a half
Yeah.
between Amanda and I.
Yes.
So it seems like, well, gosh, sexuality is just, you just figure it out and you just do it and there it is, right? But no, there's this whole layer of innocence, like
Yes.
that when you're there, it does feel like stepping back into Eden in taste.
Yes.
It's obviously not the only place we taste
Or
Eden.
into the Song of Songs again.
Right.
Maybe read the Song of Songs together.
Right.
Okay. I want to give another thought. Parents should read this book.
Yeah.
Mothers of boys, fathers of sons.
Yep.
Should read this book.
Yep.
It's just going to give you better categories.
Yes.
To think about, okay, how are we shepherding his lover heart? And where is shame getting in? And how can we help with that?
Yeah.
So it's not designed by that. That's not what it's, but I just want to hold it up as it would be super helpful.
Yep.
So the book and the series Men Talking About Women that we did, Healing Prayer is in there. But I have to pray. My Papa heart for my listeners, the abbot in me is going, we got to pray. Okay. So friends, I want you to just be aware of what this is raising in you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just name it out loud would be helpful. Just name it out loud. I am feeling these things. And then to recognize that the redemptive work of Christ includes your sexuality. It does. In fact, what Sam was saying is that the redemptive work of Christ centers in, he is most committed to redemption here. And so we are asking you, Jesus, I give you permission to my story. Jesus, I give you permission to my sexual story. The story of my sexuality. And I am asking that through attachment with you, through your kindness, your love, your presence with me in my sexuality right now, that you would carry forward my healing process, your redemptive work for women in my femininity and for men in my masculinity, for couples in our shared sexuality. We invite you in. And then, Jesus, we are asking you as a community of people, and one by one individually, we're saying, Lord, if there's something that I need to do here, if I need to see a therapist, if I need to go to a trauma intensive, if there's some healing prayer, if I need to bring this to my men's group, if I need to start praying with my spouse about this, show me the healing path. Show me the healing path. I invite you in and I ask you to permeate my sexual story and my sexuality. In Jesus' name, we all pray. Amen.